Hello everybody, this is Senex, and I'm going to be bringing you a 1 versus 1 in just a moment. It's not going to be your standard 1 versus 1 of Starcraft. What we're looking at right now is a post made by Barrin, who's a community member who has a really interesting idea that he's actually gone through and made the maps to execute. That idea is that in Starcraft 2, the 8 minerals and 2 gas base leads to certain changes and potentially even problems versus what Brood War was forcing players to do. And that's that it's possible to get just 2 or 3 bases, make a nice big army, and go and hit your opponent. And that's usually where a lot of games end up. You'll see things like, for example, in 6m1hyg. You usually take your main, your expansion, knock down the rocks, and maybe one more base. Then you make your death ball, and you have your gigantic fight at the end, and everybody pretty much dies. There are some games that are a lot bigger than that, some games that end a lot more quickly than that. But that's kind of the general pattern that we get. So, if we think that it'd be more interesting for the games to involve a lot more small unit tactics, a lot more expanding, a lot more spread out conflict, instead of just, I get my death ball and I kill you with it, or I lose because your death ball is better than mine, how do we go about doing that? And the solution that Mr. Barrin has come up with is that he postulates that if we can just reduce the amount of minerals and gas per base, we're going to need to take more bases in order to get those big endgame armies that we're going to eventually want to get up to. And that will lead to really interesting things just getting to that point. The conflicts will be a lot more frequent, will be a lot more micro-based, and involve a different composition of units than you might at first think. And so you can see this is the original post that Barrin has made, Breadth of Gameplay in Starcraft 2. I recommend everybody take a look at it. It's on Team Liquid. It's really, really well thought out and executed. He has some great things, like, for example, if you just want to skim it and get the key ideas, he puts red brackets around the critical points that he's making. And as you can see, as I'm just scrolling through here real quick, it's an extremely long post. He has lots of fun pictures to help make his points. He has graphs that I'll be scrolling to in just a... Yeah, here they are. Right here he talks about how much a single mineral patch gets you versus in StarCraft 2 if it's near far, Brood War, and all that other stuff. He looks at gas collection rates and essentially does all of the math to back up his core ideas of having fewer minerals per base might lead to some really, really interesting changes in the StarCraft 2 metagame. So I'll just quickly scroll down here to the end so you guys can actually see what you might be getting into if you take a look at it. He has a nice little herding esports thing, which is now required by law for everybody to include the herding esports elephant. But anyway, we're going to be hopping straight into this game here. This is a game that there was a group of us last night who were obsing a number of these games being played. And so what the ultimate solution that Barrin came up with was to have 6 mineral patches and 1 high-yield gas per base. And that reduces the amount of money that you'll be getting per base by exactly 25%. And so he made this map, which is, man, I really should remember the name of this one. The other, oh, it's Devolution. Devolution is the name of this map. The other one that you can experiment with is the Entombed Crypts. I'll look it up later and post a correction. But anyway, so get this game going. In the bottom left, we have Omne, who is the yellow Protoss. And in the top right, we have Grizzly, who is the red Terran. And right off the bat, you're going to see some interesting things with the workers, in that you're immediately 1 mineral per worker saturated, just with your 6 starting units. That means that when you hit 12 supply, you're going to be optimally saturated on this one base. Nobody saw that. You didn't see how long the game was, because I totally am not a professional caster. I'm trying. I'll be learning fast, but I'm not quite there yet. Anyway, when you're at 12 supply, you're going to be maxed out on the one base. If you are up to 13 supply, you can send out a worker to go scout, and that leads to a very quick scout in general for most people, and it won't affect your mineral income really at all. Because of the way these particular minerals are laid out, you'll see that there's just 1 that's really far back, and maybe the 2 on the ends that are a little further away. So you're probably never going to want to go above about 14 or 15 workers actually mining minerals. Then you have the Rich Vespine Geyser, which can have up to 3 people working it for optimal efficiency. That's another really great thing that variant makes you pay attention to is how many guys do you want in that gas? Because if you put all 3 in the gas immediately, you're going to find yourself completely overrun by gas. You can't possibly spend it all. So you have to start thinking, well, do I just want 1? So if I'm a Zerg, say, I can get my Zerging speed just kind of eventually, but not rush to it. Do I want 2? Because I'm going to be making like a couple sentries just to control my ramp, but mostly Zealots and Stalkers. But anyway, back to the game. Right now we see Omni, he's sending his probe out to go scout. Grizzly's already going for a wall-in. I actually think that wall-ins have become a lot more important, even versus people with ranged units like Protoss, who can begin to pick away at them, just because the amount of damage that you can do with just a couple units is dramatically increased when you only have a couple to defend with as well. So if you get hit with like 3 Stalkers early, you're going to have a much bigger problem than if you were able to just saturate the one base and get out enough Marine Marauders to just go and completely crush that small force. So right now, just a pretty standard game from both players. They're teching up in a pretty usual way, but you'll already see that we have workers who are wandering around in Omni's base trying to find what's the optimal mineral patch. Right now, he's max saturated, as you can see. Everybody has 2, or in this case, 3. On this base. So you can continue building workers. It will be much like in Brood War, where what you'll want to do is take an early expand, which is what Omni's looking at doing right now, and you'll immediately saturate the base. Even though you've been oversaturated on your main and not actually getting very much value out of it, as soon as that second base is up, you're going to immediately begin getting a huge amount of payoff from it because you built all of the workers that you're going to need to insta-saturate. You'll see that Grizzly's starting to get a little bit of early aggression going on here. He has the 2 racks starting with the standard 1 reactor, and I'm guaranteed that this is going to be a tech lab. There's no way that he'd be going for anything other than that. But it was scouted by the SCV when we look at Omni's by the probe. When you look at Omni's cannon, you can see that he saw both the barracks, so he's going to know that there's something a little fishy going on here. Particularly with the reduced resources, 2 racks is a big commitment. You're committing a lot to actually go and kill your opponent with that, or at least do enough damage to get yourself back in the game. So as we see on the units tab, we're at even harvesters. Mules are definitely important on this map, but you'll find that it's actually less. You're less likely to get into the late game orbital spam than you usually are in your standard Starcraft 2 games as well, which leads to other interesting changes. And Grizzly completely stopped SCV production. In fact, he probably should have stopped it a little while ago. He's oversaturated on that first mining base. You also look at his gas. Because he has the 3 guys in gas, he's more gas than he knows what to do with. When he's only spending 25 gas on a Marauder and getting the 1 upgrade of stim, he can't possibly spend a high-yield refinery full of gas.